is Cinephile ASMR, and as of the upload of this video, happy Halloween, everybody. And I know, like, for about 364 other days out of this year, or in a year, that is going to be kind of rendered pointless as a statement, but you know the title of this video, and right now we are in Halloween, and it is joyous, at least for the most part. You know, as you get older, it kind of changes. The prerogative of Halloween as a whole, as a holiday, shifts from being more of an engager, trick-or-treating. I've been trick-or-treating for a while, maybe a bit too old than I should be, but it is fun. It is fun kind of just becoming a person more passive during the holiday season. It doesn't mean it is any less important. But before we get into all of that, you like my drip? It's not really a Halloween costume. It is just a onesie snuggie that has a bunch of cute little slots on it. Are you dressing up this year? I hope you are. How are you doing? Please, if you are new here, once again, my name is Cine or Cinephile ASMR, your go-to one-stop shop for everything movies, pop culture, and tingles. Tingles. So please subscribe, like, comment some of your favorite Halloween movies, because we're going to get into all the goodies in a second. And please turn that notification bell on, and don't forget to follow me on Letterboxd, where I basically do the most up-to-date reactions and reviews, all done way before I hit the record button and make a video for the movies that I am watching. I am so excited to talk about these movies today. If you are not aware, we're not talking about one, we're not talking about two, but we are talking about 6 different perfect Halloween / fall time movies you need to watch today, but they also double as just a great time to watch during October, maybe September and November. I was really looking for how I could best approach this kind of video. I've wanted to make a video like this every year since I started a YouTube channel back in 2021. I just didn't know what was the right foothold to have. I love horror movies. It is my favorite genre. Halloween is my favorite holiday, and with that means that there are worlds of possibilities to be had. So I was brainstorming here, and I could tell you about some of my favorites, which are the classics: Halloween, Scream, Monster House, all of those goodness. But I was thinking to myself, you guys know that by now. So then I was thinking of some of my all-time favorites, and I felt I could go down a true rabbit hole with all of that. So I found a really fun idea where I take all 5 of the best streaming services. So we have Tubi, we have Netflix, we have Hulu, we have Prime, and we're going to finish it off with Max. And now I really wanted to just get all of them grouped in to make it as accessible for you, because nothing is more sucky than when you get put onto a movie that costs money. And I understand 2024, Uncle Sam is at our wallets, so I'm trying to make it as accessible for you as possible. So all of those, I hope you at least have one. And a little discretion here, just because there is a movie that I put paired to a streaming service. I found that you can watch on multiple streaming services. I just so happened to find that movie on that service. So don't feel defeated if you find a link and you don't have one. Seek it out. And again, these aren't my favorite horror films, but again, a mix of what I think is perfect to watch with a group of friends or by yourself. Absolute peak consumption for Halloween with some candy, some eggnog, hot cocoa, whatever, and just some that I think you will like, that I hope is palatable for you. These range though. Some are fun, silly, some are dark, some are intense, some are just crazy, but all of them are coming from the heart here. So before we get into it, just please kick back, put your feet up for You are awesome, and I'm so thankful that you are here. Let's relax and start off with Tubi. Now, I picked 6 movies, 2 of which are on Tubi, and there's one for each other streaming service. I decided to pick 2 today because Tubi is a free streaming service with about like 1 to 2 minutes of ads total, and I think it's the best. I love Tubi. I've been a Tubi ride or die since the pandemic, so I really wanted to give 2 really fun ones. And this first one is actually the one I think I've seen the most recent out of all the films on this list, with Hell House LLC. As a 2000s baby and a teen during the later end of the 2010s, found footage was quite literally every single corner you looked. No matter what, you turn left, you get like a $2 million found footage film that sucks. You look to the right, it's a $3 million found footage film that doesn't always suck, but it's kind of bad. So I grew up with it. That was like my bread and butter. I loved it. And with that though, as I've gotten older, I've begun to see the foundational cracks that were the lessons learned from the trailblazers, such as Blair Witch Project, Paranormal Activity, and just a couple of really good ones sprinkled about. But with that, I have begun to find they're all pretty bad to an extent. So I kind of gave up on the genre. But with Hell House LLC, TikTok took a hold of it, Twitter went rampant with it, and to me, it is the perfect signifier of found footage, maybe not pushing the subgenre, but finding a concept and running with it. I think you have the trailblazers of Blair Witch, of Paranormal Activity, most recently Skinamarink, and they're excellent, but all it takes is a really cool concept to kind of go hand in hand with the found footage, and you are there. And with Hell House LLC, the plot is crazy, as you follow a group of people who are basically people who go to different buildings or leased spots around like the New Yorkish area, and they begin setting up their own haunted house, and they do it every year during October. And with this one in particular, they find a spot that was surprisingly cheap, but with a pretty intense history behind it. They negate that, they don't really pay much mind to it, and as they are creating this haunted house, things begin going awry quicker, but also much darker than they could ever imagine. I was quite honestly floored by this film, because the majority of found footage films are about 80% meh, 20% those last 10 to 15 minutes gas, and depending on those last 10 to 15, it makes the journey worth it. But with Hell House, honestly, the journey oftentimes was on par with those last 30 minutes, which is insane. And a lot of it is just how true and authentic it plays itself to the idea at hand. I have always been fascinated with those true real-life stories of haunted houses that pop up with people that are dedicated to trying to scare the living hell out of you. And there is stories like McCamey Manor of people going so far to the limits that people are scarred and they can't even last 24 hours. And I think that is just kind of festered in a sort of subculture hyperfixation for me. And when I get to see a fictionalized film that plays itself so straight, but also cares so deeply about the ambience and atmosphere of this house, dude, it is so good. And what really does set Hell House LLC apart is whether it is through the actors who haven't really been in much outside of this, or the attention to the script. You feel like these people quite literally are in it because they love it. Some have been in the game a lot longer than others. You can kind of tell there's a bit more of a materialistic edge for some, but it all is just this unit of people. So when things start going down, you realize they're not in it for rags to riches or selfish corporate reasons. It's just they are trying to make the most of this situation, and I love it. I really do. And it's an hour and a half long, whereas they are building the set and they are trying to implement it to be a scarier atmosphere. The horror and the jump scares and the fear and the dread builds naturally with it. It's this crazy, like, paradoxical relationship, but it works. And with it, there is some scares. If you are afraid of clowns, outside of Art the Clown, there is a clown mask build. I won't say much about it, but it is bone chilling, and it's the kind of thing that lends itself to a lot of inventive scares, because you keep going through this house over and over again as they are building, perfecting, kind of constructing these horror elements, and your brain is telling yourself, that's different. Oh, but maybe it's because they changed it, or they're building it and constructing it differently than when it was when they first got there. But that element of mystery and allure is the reason why you need to watch this movie. And what's even funny is the fact that there is 3 sequels to it. Tried watching the second, really wasn't working for me, but I hear the 4th one is better than the first, and that is shocking considering I love the first one a lot. And it's the reason why found footage, even in the year of 2024, I think still works, and it isn't just a 1 to 2 off gimmick. And I would advise seeing it with a lot of friends. I think it is so fun, and when it inevitably goes so wrong, I think that's when the film really comes to a head, and that realism makes it almost feel like this is happening in real life and you're watching tapes that you shouldn't be. I love the film. It knows exactly what it is, but lives in that world of comfort by occupying such fear and dread that is elicited in its audience, myself included. Taking a hard left, still on Tubi here, is a film that I have loved for years, originally having seen it with my brother on the Sci-fi channel. Pandorum is sci-fi horror melded together as a stark reminder that we need more sci-fi horror with a total commitment of atmosphere. I have always done the elevator pitch to this movie when someone asks for a good horror film. I say, hey, have you ever played Dead Space? And if they have or they haven't, I describe to them what Dead Space is, and I say, this is the closest movie you will ever get to a Dead Space film, because it just follows a small grouping of people. You start off with a man who wakes up out of a sort of cryo sleep of sorts, and then he meets another person, and you begin to realize and piece these puzzle pieces together that they have woken up at the wrong time. Their ship is going in a direction maybe that it wasn't even going to begin with, and then on top of that, maybe the whole directive that they have been told is a complete facade. On top of it all, there may or may not be these barbaric grouping of cannibalistic monsters that they have to fend off, all in search of trying to figure out what the hell is going on. To me, this is camp, it's cheese, but it is loads of fun, and it is the kind of thing that is a reason why I think Dead Space is one of the scariest games ever made. And it's because in each corridor you have no idea what's in store. You have no idea who they're gonna meet, whether it is friend or foe, creature or human. And then you have the whole other layer that the people that you are familiar with may have ulterior motives this whole time. It's like you step into a room that has the Silent Hill fog, and you have no idea where you're going, but the train's moving and you gotta keep going. I think sci-fi, truthfully speaking, with Alien especially, is so right and fruit-bearing when it comes to horror. There is just so many avenues you can go about it with creatures such as the xenomorphs, but also really let it be character-centric, because you are following them, and oftentimes with an alien or a Pandorum, they are in a situation, they don't know what is happening, it is way over their heads, so you get to feel that confusion, that delirium, but you can't get enough of it, and that is Pandorum in a nutshell. The writing isn't very good, the performances range drastically, but I think it is the epitome of a film that you get the greasiest pizza, the highest carbonated soda possible, preferably Little Caesars. That's one of my favorite pizza places. faces, and you just have fun. I remember my brother showing this to me on the Sci-fi channel, and I thought it was so good, and it's the kind of film that you just have fun with. There is no trying to make you feel like there is a broader world at play, or it's not even trying to say much at all outside of just feeling unrelentlessly fun. But that is not to shortchange the horror and the kills and the blood and the effects and the prosthetics. This movie is just so wild and really does emphasize the fact that the film industry is not nearly what it was like 15 years ago. This came out in like 2009, and it was like that mid-budget horror film. But now it's either you spend under $5 million or you have to be Jordan Peele to be making films for $50 to $100 million. And horror just lived in this space where it dared to do risks while also kind of living in a blueprint of a Dead Space or an Alien. And I think it just worked. Since then, I have coined the term sci-fi movie, and I think this film perfectly sits within that, similar to films like Skyline, If You Know, You Know, and it's perfectly suitable for that. It's under 2 hours. It is so good. You're in, you're out, but that in-between period, man, just be prepared if you're squeamish. I don't recommend it, but even if you kind of are, it's Halloween. This is your one chance a year to explore avenues you haven't. So those are the 2 Tubi movies. Now let's cross Candy Cane Forest. Wait, Candy Cane? No, let's cross Candy Corn Forest into Netflix territory. And truthfully, it felt like I was lying to myself every time I found a possible contender when I knew quite like immediately the films that I wanted to talk about here. And I gotta admit it, Netflix doesn't have the best track record when it comes to original horror films, with the exception of the Fear Street trilogy. I think those are probably going to be the most popular films on this video today, but it is undeniable how great they are. You have 3 films that when they came out, it was like a couple weeks apart, all directed by one woman with all the same actors and a clear vision in mind. It felt almost opposite and antithetical to what Netflix does, which is avoid risk-taking. It was crazy. And all 3 of these, whether it's the first one that takes place in the 90s, the second one that takes place in 78, and then the third one, which goes all the way back to the Crucible time period of like 1666, and you have yourself a jam-packed Scooby-Doo mystery/horror extravaganza that feels like if you grew up on Goosebumps and you wanted something a bit more deranged, bloody, but oh so delicious. And they're all great. I think the first and the third kick the most ass, but even that second, which exists as almost a love letter to the Friday the 13th Jason Voorhees slashers, rips. Each feels so unique in its separate identity as well, and that's the beauty of it. The 90s one leads you straight in to what could be a curse that goes back centuries that this group of people have to figure out how to undo, or they're kind of screwed. And thus you follow different characters throughout different decades, or again centuries, to help find the root to what is happening. And it is so insane. Like I said, the 90s one feels like a true love letter to the Wes Craven movies, to the Screams. The 78 version pays homage to the slashers of that decade. The 1666 is again akin to the Crucible, where witchcraft, hearsay, was the talk of the town, if you will. And I think it is all just so rich with detail. Each of them are shot so freaking pristine. But truthfully, again, people talk about the Stranger Things era, or when you watched something for the first time. I remember when Fear Street 94 came out, I had no idea what I was getting into. I was bored. saw that it was getting some pretty good reviews. I tuned in. I freaking loved it. And then at the very end, slight spoilers, it teases 78. And I was like, oh damn, okay, so are we gonna wait like a year? No, a week and a half to 2 weeks from my understanding. And that was just so freaking cool. And they are the epitome of, again, gather everyone you know. Because the beauty of it as well is every person I have talked to has varying opinions and takes about what their favorite parts of the movies were or things they didn't like. And you are guaranteed to have such a ripe conversation filled with nuance, fun, and this is a perfect drinking game to do as well, or just a game in general. Find your favorite kills and tally them, because for me, I remember just talking to people about some of their favorite kills and my favorite kills, and by the end, it was this tangled web, and I'm not even kidding you, some of these are truthfully some of the best kills that I've seen in the 2020s, hands down. I will be the first to criticize Netflix when they fail. It almost feels like the streaming model is anti-art in a lot of ways, and they just churn stuff out, and it's not very good. But these absolutely rip to a level that it almost even feels shocking that they exist in the first place. But I'm reminded whenever I watch them again and again, and I promise you, you will not regret it. It feels satisfying to start, to go through the journey, and the way it concludes all ties it together in a way where I cannot understand if you didn't like one drastically less than the others. They're all, for me, like an 8 or above. So we start off on Almond Joy Island, and then we traverse down to Candy Cane Forest with Netflix, and now let's sail down to the Butterfinger Badlands that is Hulu. And for me, I didn't even realize this movie was on that streaming service, but I quite literally paused my day to watch about 45 minutes of it, and I was like, okay, I gotta get back to logging in. For me, an incredibly slept-on murder mystery that is attached to a franchise that is attached to a profoundly influential author who wrote murder mysteries, Agatha Christie. We have A Haunting in Venice, a movie that is directed by the man who stars in it with his twirly mustache. Kenneth Branagh plays Hercule Poirot, a investigator a la Sherlock Holmes, and he is requested in the midst of him having sort of a midlife crisis, if he even still wants to be a detective, to kind of uncover the mysterious murder slash disappearance slash question mark, I'm going to be very vague, of someone that leads to a Halloween Eve party turned murder mystery, and it becomes a quick whodunit in ways that feel like the most perfect love letter to the subgenre. Out the gate, although this is technically the third film in the franchise, with Murder on the Orient Express being first, Death on the Nile, and then this being the third, A Haunting in Venice, you do not need to watch the other two. I haven't, and they each, from my understanding, exist as standalone films, and that should prove even more. I would not recommend a film that is the third in a franchise where I haven't seen the first two if I didn't think it was true jet fuel oil gas. This movie is so freaky, so crazy, so twisty and turvy, but it is shot and looks quite literally like, if you've ever been on Haunted Mansion, you know what I mean, like a gaudy building, a mansion of gothic proportions, quite literally in every capacity, where it is almost like I want to twiddle my mustache and speak in whatever accent I'm in. But quite literally, this film is so filled with an abundance of twists and turns where you will go left, right, and center, where the horror isn't necessarily the forefront, but it paves the way to be in service for a lot of creepy that is ultimately what I'm trying to do here with this video, is create a diverse pool of movies where you have the horror, you have the fun, you have the sci-fi, you have the murder mysteries that feel so fun to watch. You have this movie that looks so pristinely crafted, and knowing that Kenneth Branagh directs and stars in the film, and it goes full tilt into goon territory with how it is handled. And no, I will not provide any nuance to that statement. It is a ball of fun, especially if you are a fan of films like I am, which are murder mysteries done right. I think Knives Out really put a nice resurgence and boost of dopamine to that sort of genre of movie making that we hadn't gotten in so long. And although I will be the first to admit the mystery itself is more fascinating as you're trying to figure it out versus the reveal itself, a la through predictability or maybe disappointment, I quite literally think that journey is worth the price of admission without a shadow of a doubt in my mind. You know, there is this conversation that goes around about the death of the movie star, where people would line up to see a movie because of the name recognition alone, and now we don't get that very much anymore. It has to take a Dune Part 2 for that to be as successful as it is. So when we get a prodigious murder mystery with so many different A/semi B-listers that are all working at the tops of their game to execute a story so fun and engrossing set on Halloween, I have to say, you need to watch this. It is a film that I don't think works on all fronts. It does have that slippage to it. It doesn't always keep up or retain the juice, but I'm quite literally talking about one of those tanks that sit on buildings that kind of prevent fires from burning it down, and the juice drips out a little bit, but that thing is still full, baby. It is great. And you know, I think it doubles. If you have friends that love murder mysteries or the Halloween atmosphere, watch it with them or watch it by yourself, because both options are banging, and it is a blast if you allow it the time it needs to kind of convince you of it, which is no time at all. You need to watch it. Now, from the Butterfinger Badlands, we are going to swim our way and trek into the Starburst Sanctuary, moving in to Prime Video. Now, this film is not for the faint of heart in a way that is not akin to the blood in Terrifier or the overt jump scares of a Conjuring, but more in a film that I think you need to give it the time possible, because it plays itself so straight, but it's a film that to this day I can vividly remember seeing it when I was like 13, and when I finished it I was like, this shit is kind of ass, but I quite literally have not stopped thinking about it in different capacities since to this day. Lake Mungo is a film that almost feels in response when it came out as a big trendsetter to the true crime craze rave. People love it. People love to listen to the true stories of horrible happenings and people and the deranged perspectives, and I think that is whole worthy of a conversation one day. But I think this film kind of personifies the fear, the panic, and the horror underneath all of it, as you follow a family that is going through the midst of an investigation of what happened to their daughter. And with it, you get interviews, recordings, tapes, photos that feels like an NBC Dateline 50/50 episode. But there is something so much deeper and sinister at play, and if you pay attention, let me just tell you, without giving too much away, that if you look and have a keen eye, you will notice certain apparitions in almost arguably every single scene, and it completely changes the film that you're watching entirely. I've been saying a true commitment to the films at hand This film plays itself so straightforward, as if you are not watching a movie, but a documentary, a special on television, that you can finish it and wonder, why was this labeled as a horror film? Because to me, that's what I did. And I'll never forget, I will never, ever forget when I told my friend what I had just watched, just because he was curious. I was like, oh, I just watched this movie. Let me show you the trailer. And I showed it to him. Quite literally, I had to pause because there was a frame in that movie that I had just watched where I was like, wait, what is that? And I'm not even joking with you. The moment since I saw that, I rewatched it. Completely different film for me. Completely different. It is a film that is not for everyone. It doesn't cater to that hunger that people have, that has kind of been fed and molded through modern horror filmmaking with jump scares. It kind of is fast food in a way. This is not that at all. It is a slow trickle that, if you think it is boring you to tears, it is driving you insane because of how much you're not liking it. Dude, if I could give you the keys back to the car, I would. Trust me. But Lake Mungo, when you allow it, and if it hits you right, it will lock the doors and you are going to be sent down a trip to hell. Okay, I'm being a little bit exaggerative with that because, to me, to say it in that sort of extreme is undercutting the film, because I don't think it wants you to go there, but it's the kind of movie that once you pick up on its wavelength, you will not stop thinking about it. Because you see, on the one hand, it is this deeply melancholic, dour examination of a family trying to convince themselves at every single moment what had happened to their daughter/sister was a cruel fate. Some, with the grieving process, refuse to acknowledge it, and it's those questions that aren't answered, the unanswered thoughts, the feelings, and the way in which it happened that felt so random and out of nowhere, that leaves this family in shambles. And that is the beautiful tightrope that Lake Mungo walks, where there is the horror film if you want to play investigator, but it's also just such a sad, sad film. And when you combine those two, you are left with a film that is going to leave you with a taste in your mouth, one that may not make you feel good whether you didn't like it, or even kind of worse if you did, because there is nothing like it in its execution, in its commitment to the bit, if you will. And I think the craziest thing about it is the director hasn't done anything from it. None of the actors in it went on to have fruitful, prosperous careers. It feels almost like a Blair Witch Project in the sense that it feels so real, so out of nowhere, that you could be fooled to think that it was real. I do not recommend you watch this with anybody. Actually, quite the opposite. For me, it was a pretty insane experience, and one that I have to credit for the reason why I love horror so much, beyond the genre and as a medium and as a vessel to tell stories in the wildest of ways. I think horror, to me, bends at all these different whims of filmmakers, and although people consider the modern age of horror to be so much about trauma, I think it works that way. And this film is so sad. It's just so sad, but truly one of a kind, and one that I think about to this day. So now that we have finished having our little tribunal and fun at the Starburst Sanctuary, we are going to end off our journey at my personal favorite candy spot, the M&M Mountain, as we can overlook all the films, and we are stopping at our last stop in HBO Max, or Max, depending on how you look at it, with a film that is the hardest to recommend. One, even worse than Lake Mungo. If by the end of the 80 minutes that you take watching it, you came out of it saying it's one of the worst things you've ever seen, it kind of hurt me a little bit, because right now, currently, if you look on my letterbox, it is place in my top 4. It is a film that has had such a deep reach and profound impact on me that it quite literally reignited my desire for consecration again, for my love of art and filmmaking. And without kind of diving too deep before I get into the movie, this year has been one of, if not the hardest year of my life. It has taken me to every wrong direction that I could have never asked for. And the worst thing is, it's not done yet. I am in the midst of it. And I'm trying. I am trying, guys. And I want you to know that this movie, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat it or guilt trip you if you don't like it, but more so, if you give it an opportunity, and the words that I'm about to say describing the plot and describing the movie, know it is rooted in authenticity and in nothing but love and admiration for the film and you guys. We're all going to the World's Fair, to me, is the most eloquent summation of the way that our generation, for me, Gen Z, maybe even millennials to an extent, or just beyond that, people with unfeathered internet access at a young age, tend to often feel the deepest levels of loneliness. And to me, there's been no film that has been able to capitalize on it. You know, the catfish era of television, trying to describe the anonymity of people, has never done it for me in a way that has spoke to my experience. Growing up, I had a computer and access to things that I think have scarred me to this day. And I think with that comes this sense of awareness, of understanding that in our time period, in the year of 2024, in the 21st century, we have access to communicating with more people than anyone before us has, yet it feels the most crippling, isolating, and just shitty. I have no other way to describe it. And with this film, you follow Casey, a girl who is kind of addicted to the newest trend, this game of sorts, a challenge called the World's Fair Challenge, where through a bunch of challenges you have to go through and do, you will then be granted access to the World's Fair. But soon you realize this is not about an internet fad or something trendy, but a grapple at help and what it means to ultimately want something and feel all these things but have no true way of expressing it. This film is directed by Jane Schoenbrunn, a trans filmmaker who, since watching this film, went on to do I Saw the TV Glow. And spoiler alert for my eventual best of 2024 list, it is my favorite film of the year. She is able to hit this chord of feeling immense sadness, but never knowing how to say why or how, or more importantly, what to do to get out of it. And to me, this film is unbelievably authentic to that process, to the idea of latching yourself on to different trends, fads, or just fixations that you create as a means of escapism, but also the way that the internet can pair you with someone is the exact person I need right now. But it might all just be for naught. It all might be a bunch of smoke and mirrors. And to me, this film terrifies me on a level that no other film ever has, where it feels like a mirror was put onto me in a lot of ways, because that internet access created a sense of loneliness, created a gap in between growth that I should have been having, meeting new people, communicating effectively with parental figures. I've been through a lot, and this film does feel like that. And I understand this might be the most like me pick of it all and feels a bit redundant to the entire point of this video, but I think if I can have any of you check this film out and feel an ounce of the way that it spoke to me be applied to you, then my job here is done. I quite literally am Thanos looking at the beautiful serene valley hilltop as he quite literally obliterates universe. And that's all I can ask for, but I recommend this as well during this time of year because of the way it looks. It's shot, it was made for like $10,000 to $20,000, and it has this ambience and atmosphere that feels like so on brand to the fall time. Contains with it one of my favorite performances, and is just all around an 80-minute film that no matter how much I would ever try to get it out of my brain, it never will. I am not very lenient when it comes to putting films in my top 4. It was always a mix of The Matrix, Spider-Man 2, Magnolia, and Cloud Atlas, and then I had to shuffle it all around because of this film. And I think that is the beauty of it all. We start off with a found footage haunted house film and end with an examination of depression and just technology feeding into our worst fears in the modern era. And that journey, I think, is hopefully one that you can at least find a single film or something that you liked about one of these movies and feel aligned, feel seen, feel heard, feel loved, because that is what art, and hopefully by extension me talking about it, is and does for you, as it so selfishly does for me. I love making videos every single day, whether it be on YouTube, TikTok, or just in general. I feel like that was why I was born here, to just make stuff, to express myself. It is unbelievably cathartic, so I do truthfully hope by the end of this, even if you don't watch any of these videos, you spend about 35-40 minutes with me, feeling like you have a friend by your side on Halloween. I wish I had more plans going on the day itself, but for right now, it is making this video for you guys, and frankly, couldn't ask for any better part of my day. So, please, the best and most important part of all these videos, comment below if you've seen or watched any of the movies I recommended prior to this video or as a result of, and let me know some of your favorite more obscure Halloween/fall film recs. I want to know all of it. Comment below. I love you, and every one of you so very much. I'm Cinephile ASMR. I will catch you in the next video, and remember,